One of the best ways to teach a child lessons in responsibility is make sure the child actually knows what responsibility is. In our society, we are deeply divided on this. I think that a lot of times we have an amazing ability to think logically to wrong conclusions. But on this, we don't really take a left turn or a right turn. We head right toward the definition of it and split on either side. You got one side going, until these people accept responsibility, they will never be able to. And you got the other side going, but don't you understand what their mama was like? And so it's curious to me that neither side really understands. See, if our society understood responsibility, we would have an economy that was kicking on all cylinders. Relationships would work in a huge way. So it is important that children understand that responsibility is about hope and control. You know, if it's somebody else's fault, if it's my neighbor's fault, or if it's the president's fault, or if it's my teacher's fault, or if it's my buddy's fault, or if it's the weather's fault, or if it's the fault of the economy, you know, there's not a lot of hope and control there. But if something is up to me, if something is my fault, then there is hope to travel a different pathway and control over that pathway. Think with me here. If where I have ended up really is the fault of the President of the United States, I might as well jump off a cliff now. Because what the heck am I going to do about the President, whoever the President happens to be? But if somehow I can look in a mirror and say, I've had some crazy things happen in my life. I've had some tragedies happen, and I couldn't control any of them. But I have made choices in response to those crazy things that have led my life right down a path to a place I don't like. You see, if we can understand and believe, we can make choices that would lead us to a place we don't like, that's great news, right? Because if we can believe we can make choices that'll take us to a place we don't like, doesn't it just make sense we could also make choices that would take us to a place we do like? So the game becomes make better choices. And we do that by governing our thinking, what we're reading, what we're watching, who we're around. All those things gather into the way we think. And of course, our thinking determines our choices. So this responsibility thing is very key to understand. Another aspect of teaching responsibility, especially to a teenager, happened to me not too long ago when my 14-year-old was asking me about money and making money and how you make money and what kind of jobs. Because he's 14 and he's looking at 16 and he's looking at that car and he knows his dad's not going to buy it for him. So he knows he has to make some money, and it was a perfect opportunity for me to tell him, you know how some of the things we have to remind you about and some of the things that you do without being reminded, the things that you do without being reminded or the things that you take responsibility for, those are very valuable. I said, and you'll find in our society, the people who take more responsibility generally make more money. And he said, no, what do you mean? I said, well, okay, well, think about the fast food industry, all right? There's somebody, and we see the kid that takes the garbage out, and he sweeps the floor, and that's what he does. There's a certain amount that he is paid for that. Now, there's a very small amount of responsibility, but it is responsibility to keep the floor cleaned or to take the garbage out. But then there's somebody in that fast food place that's cooking the burgers, and they're handling the food, and there's more responsibility there, and they're paid more. And then, of course, there's the manager. Well, the manager has to make sure that the floors are clean and make sure that the burgers are right and make sure that the customers are happy and make sure that the deliveries are there. There's more responsibility in management, and there's more money in management. Now, of course, there's somebody who owns the franchise. Well, they risked their capital. They invested that money so that they could take more responsibility for the outcome and make more money. Okay, because the owner is ultimately responsible for everybody. He's responsible for even the guy who's cleaning the floors, because If the health department comes in and says this place is not clean and they close it down, it's the owner that is ultimately responsible and ultimately gets the penalty. But of course, that trickles down to those people who weren't watching out for the things they were responsible for. So responsibility is a key in our society if you want to get ahead, if you want to achieve, if you want to make money. And understanding it and knowing exactly what it is and how it applies to you is the first step.